Let's talk about bug blindness. If you've ever jiggled that doorknob or wiggled that light switch or ignored that pile of laundry in the corner, that's essentially bug blindness. There's something wrong in your environment, but you've gotten used to it and you've learned to work around it. And then when something changes in your situations, your parents are coming over to visit, or you're about to sell your house, suddenly you realize that these problems exist and you set about fixing them, even though you've been living with them for months, years, decades, potentially. And this can happen in video games as well. As we implement features, we can unconsciously ignore bugs that exist in the code, in the content, in the features. How does this happen and how do we avoid it? First of all, the people who implement a feature are actually the most likely to suffer from bug blindness. Because I've made this system and I know exactly how it is supposed to work, it's very likely that when I'm going about testing it, I'm going to stay within the boundaries of what makes sense to me in terms of expected behavior. So I'm going to test a couple of obvious fail states, but I'm unlikely to test it very robustly because I know that this is how it's supposed to work and that's how I'm going to interact with it. If I build a hallway, my testing is going to involve walking down the center of the hallway. I might think, okay, I should probably test the wall and I might run along the edge of the wall as well, but I'm less likely to try hopping my way around the space. I'm less likely to try barrel rolling through the entire hallway. This is why we have QA. We have QA because they are trained to test the edges of systems. So one way we get bug blindness is by being too familiar with the system that we implemented in the first place. To avoid that, we have QA. But QA can suffer from bug blindness as well. When we bring QA on too early, they can be testing a system that isn't fully implemented, that doesn't have its full set of features, that contains a lot of bugs that are expected to be there because the system is in the middle of being implemented. So the natural inclination is to tell the QA people not to file those bugs because we haven't implemented knee bending in our walking simulation yet. So don't file those bugs because we'll get to it and there's no need to file that bug because it's already planned to be worked on. But because you have now told them not to file that bug, you're encouraging them as you continue to test the system to become bug blind to that particular kind of bug. And then when you have implemented the knee bending system, they're not really paying attention to that anymore because you have already trained them not to file that kind of bug. How do we avoid bug blindness? First of all, have QA people. Have people whose job it is to test systems in different ways, be aware of things that are going on, and to put the finding and filing of bugs at the top of their priority list. There can be benefits to adding QA on very early, but if you are going to do that, think about bringing on fresh eyes later in the project when systems are complete, so that you can have a new set of QA people on your project who don't have those preconceived notions, who don't have that built-up bug blindness, because they can learn from the experience of the existing QA, but also bring a fresh set of eyes who aren't going to ignore fairly obvious things. If you can't bring on fresh eyes, if you can't bring on new QA, then it can also be useful to simply change the stance of the project. One of the reasons why the projects I've worked on often have a lot of fairly obvious bugs found at very late stages is because the pivot from production to finaling or from pre-production to production causes a shift in people's attitudes towards the testing process. It removes some of the veil that's built up over the eyes of the people testing it. And so things that were acceptable yesterday because we were in pre-production are no longer acceptable now that we're in production. And suddenly those bugs that were being ignored before get filed. But for me, the number one way to avoid bug blindness, the number one way to try to keep the project moving forward is to file it all and let Triage sort it out. If at all possible, don't ever tell QA not to file a certain kind of bug. Have them file it. Have them put the bug they saw into the database, even though the system isn't implemented, even though you're not going to get to it for a while. Because that way, at least it got recorded at some point. So the fact that you aren't implementing knee bending physics for another 3 months, at least the bug got tracked. So then when you finally get around to doing it, the bug is there. Then when you do it, you can resolve the bug, someone can regress the bug, and it, through that process, removes whatever bug blindness on that particular topic developed over the intervening time. Now, what I would say as well is ideally you aren't filing bugs on your project that are going to sit around for months or potentially even years, or at least that's happening rarely. But if you have QA very early on systems that barely exist, file the bugs, file what you're seeing, keep track of it, triage as you go, keep the bug database groomed, address the bugs that you can as early as you can. But by letting people file as they go, even if it's not time yet, you are going to at least get that bug tracked in the database in some form. And that form, while it may not represent the final form of the system that's being implemented, it can serve as a foundation to build the actual bug that is actually wrong with the actual system when the implementation is further along. Bug blindness happens to us all. It happens in our everyday life. We get used to things. By considering it, by taking it into account, we can ensure that our projects are better tested. We can keep people focused on making the project as good as it can possibly be and not let really obvious things slip through the cracks because we just got used to them. Special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you're interested in becoming a member, there will be a link to that down in the description. We have a Patreon as well if you are more comfortable with that. We have merch available in addition to the file it all and let Triage sort it out, which unfortunately I cannot tag because YouTube thinks it says file it ass and let Triage sort it out. We have other things as well. This is a misprint of the You May All Now Celebrate Briefly shirt. I will tag that in the video. Buying some merch also supports the channel. If you are interested in process discussions around video game development, think about subscribing to this channel or giving this video a like. I will see you again soon. Thank you.